Hi YouTube. I was going to comment on Jason Trivium's recent video upload, Presuppositionalism Refuted, question mark. I'll link it below. And I was actually going to comment on the Bible Thumping Wingnut Google Hangout show where they addressed Jason Trivium's video. I was going to say some things like, I thought that Jason's video was a good one, even though I may not necessarily agree with all of the points that he made. I think the overall message was a good one. I was going to say that I didn't think that the Bible Thumping Wingnuts Google Hangout cast of characters treated Jason or his arguments very charitably. I was going to say some things about how I actually, after watching the way that they did treat Jason, that made me feel a little better about some of the friction that I've experienced with the same cast of characters in the past, if this is how they're going to treat someone who you might consider to be an ally, a fellow Christian, although they did, I think, stoop to the character assassination of basically saying that he isn't a Christian and proposing that perhaps they're even being punked. I was going to say some things about how I felt that they were missing the message of Jason's video because of their protectionism. They seemed to be very, very defensive, and they just wanted to refute point by point instead of listening to the broader message. And I was going to say that I think his message was a good one, that basically the presuppositional apologetic is a good rationale as a defense, an apologetic, right? And a defense for the hope and the faith that they have, that's a good rationale for a belief set. But that it's not a proof of anything, and that at the end of the day, Jason seemed to think that a skeptic, atheist, etc., and the presuppositional apologist are sort of on equal footing when it comes to providing a basis for their belief sets, providing sort of evidence for their worldview, for lack of a better term. And I was going to say that that in the Bible Thumping Wingnut show, not only did they miss that, but they did say a few funny things, like that Ozzy is the new pope of atheism. That's kind of weird. I was going to say that they made a big deal about presuppositions, that everyone has presuppositions, and I was going to agree with that. I was going to say that I think it's important, however, to differentiate between the presuppositions that some theists have, presuppositional apologists, obviously, and atheists have. And that I think that this is an important distinction to make because it sort of forms the basis for people like Aaron Ra and Redline reacting so vehemently and saying that they don't have presuppositions. That this is actually, I think, on their part, a rejection of any kind of equivocation of their presuppositions and the presuppositions of a presuppositional apologist. And I think I saw Ozzy make a comment recently about that, where he sort of clarified that as well and said, the presuppositions of the apologist are a dogmatic, absolute, unbending, unyielding type of presuppositions, whereas a skeptic or an atheist clearly has presuppositions, but they're willing to analyze them critically. So, for instance, I have presuppositions such as, for instance, I presuppose I live in a mind-independent universe, and this colors pretty much absolutely everything that I do. However, I am open to evidence to the contrary. I'm open to engage in hypotheticals and thought experiments and arguments to the contrary, and I'm willing to leave that presupposition behind if, if I were to come up with a counter-argument that was compelling. Because if I wasn't in a mind-independent universe, there would just be this guy. In any case, and I think that's an important distinction to make, that yes, we all have presuppositions, but they're not the same. They're not equal in that sense. And I think that's why we get so much grief from some atheists and skeptics over that term. And I think it's important, if we're going to be honest with each other here, and we actually are trying to understand one another, then it's important that we understand that and set that and clearly define that, and then we can move on. We can actually move forward. And I was going to say a lot of stuff like that. I was going to say, in reviewing all of this, that ultimately the issue that I have with the presuppositional apologetic is that it's all about this proof. It's a proof of God's existence. The proof that God exists is that without him, you can't know anything. Well, that's all well and fine, but it's not a compelling argument to me, and certainly not to a lot of atheists. So what are you really accomplishing? First of all, it's not a proof. It's not a silver bullet. This is silliness. Even Colin Pearson in the Bible Thumping Wingnut Hangout still is clinging to this virtuous circularity label. I'm not sure where that holds any weight. It certainly doesn't, in general, in logical argumentation. That's a desperation move, if you ask me. I think if we put the presuppositional apologetic in its place as a rationale for a belief set that's rooted in honesty, in other words, that we really have no way of verifying it, right? That it's a rationale for a belief set that we have no way of verifying one way or the other at this point. So if God actually does exist, then they have a reasonable belief set. Similarly, a naturalist or an atheist or a skeptic, whatever, who roots his belief set in reason and evidence and five senses, etc. If that turns out to be accurate, then his belief set is accurate. But we don't really have any way of knowing that at this point in time. And I was going to say that, again, at the end of the day, what really is important is whether or not an argument is compelling. And beliefs are kind of slow to change sometimes, even in the face of, mountains of evidence. And so, to run around saying, well, we've reduced you to absurdity, what does it really accomplish if the person still doesn't find the evidence compelling? Does it make you feel good that you won an argument? Is that really cool? Not to mention the fact that it's an argument you've just defined into existence, right? And I think this is something else I was going to say if I was critiquing said videos, is I would have said something like, I think they're a little bit uncomfortable with arguments like Jason's. See, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we really are all being punked by Jason here, but I kind of don't think so. What I get when I watch Jason Trivium's videos is that he's actually someone who's very confident in his belief set. In fact, he's so confident that he can actually entertain arguments to the contrary, he can poke holes in his own argumentation, and he can even make arguments for his opponents. Because they don't jeopardize his belief set. He's pretty firmly rooted. And I think that's a really cool, honest, intellectually honest way to be. After all, if your belief set really is true, how many holes can you allow to have poked in it? As many as you like, right? And I think that they're uncomfortable with arguments like that, just the same as they are uncomfortable with people hypothesizing things like the ghost that never lies or truth particle or any of these basically mirrors. Because, essentially what they've done is they've defined a infallible, omnipotent, omniscient creator. They've basically defined God into existence. And so if someone shows a mirror to that and says, well, listen, I can just define something into existence as well, it doesn't make it true. They've got to find some way to discredit that. So, of course, they'll say, well, you're being intellectually dishonest. You are arguing for a belief set or a position you don't actually hold. Well, this is just a reductionist argumentation, right? There's nothing wrong with that. A person doesn't have to believe in those things to use them to show that mirror to the presuppositional apologist that, they are essentially just defining things into existence. Makes them uncomfortable, I think. And so these were all things that I was going to say were I to critique these videos. Specifically the Bible Thumping Wingnut Google Hangout show. And then I saw this.
Why does he care what atheists think? the other users that he's recommending on his channel, only one other Christian and I think 3 atheists. So, which is fine. I mean, I guess that whole thing about, having nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness. Oh, well, yeah, that's not that important, I guess. Why does he care what atheists think?
What in the world was I thinking? Thanks for watching.